Dougalling, the art of casual discovery, a happening upon beautiful and half-forgotten places and people, from the verb to Dougal.
One of these days, when I got a bit more time, I'm going to tidy this place up. And I'll tell you something, it won't look nearly as nice as it does now. Well, many of you have been wandering with me across the southeast, Kent and Sussex, for 10 years now, I suppose. And for me, it's been a wandering place. Here they call it Dougalling, because it's the brain, you know, when you get to my age, that sort of flits like a butterfly from one subject to another. I mean, for some silly reason, I'm telling you now that Rudolf Diesel, the man who developed the diesel engine and diesel fuel, and whose name sadly now is just spelt with a small d, well, he vanished suddenly on a cross-channel ferry driven by steam. Steam, you know, there's a thought. You think back to about the turn of the century, when steam was the prime mover, the important thing in industry, in agriculture. Everything worked off steam. And old boys like this, at their thrashing engines, they worked so hard, they loved those old engines. Well, two of those men who began working together way back in 1918 as driver and mate are still going strong, still working, mates together with the same old engines, lovingly renovated and maintained in the workshops of a firm that deals normally with the most up-to-date haulage and agricultural machinery. Two grand old men of steam. At the wheel, Joe Bull, 79 years old, and his one-time boss and friend, Dick Birch, 84. They started working together in their teens and have been together ever since. Well, there's something about Birch's old yard at Sellindge that gives you the feeling that for generations Birches have been saying, don't throw that away, it might come in useful sometime. So there are old thrashers, hullers, machines, paraffin engines, steam engines. They're all here, a kind of glorious mausoleum. Dick and Joe, you know, you've been together for, is it?
63 years.
63 years. I mean, it's like a kind of steam wedding or something, isn't it?
Possibly, yes.
How did it all start? I mean, as far as you two are concerned, you're great friends, and you were master and man, really, weren't you?
Exactly. I wasn't very old, you know. When he started with me, he came, we were threshing, and he came fetching water to the engine. Yeah. And it's gone on from there, step by step, that he finished off, he had a tackle as well as me.
A lot of people think of the old farmers, you know, in the 20s and 30s as being very kindly old gentlemen with rosy cheeks, rushing out with flagons of cider into the thrashing yard and that, and slipping you £5 notes. Were they like this?
Very few, very few.
Because my feeling is they were as tight as the ticks on a dog's neck, weren't they?
That's right, yeah. The only way you had to go, you used to get, so as you knew your customers, and treat them as you'd like to be treated yourself, more or less, but you knew which way to treat them. Mm. The tight ones, the tightest of all, keep upside from them. Get as many hours against them as you could. That used to keep balance the books a bit, like, you know.
I suppose when these steam horses began to hit the roads in large numbers, the four-legged type of horse was not too pleased about it. You must have had some strange encounters.
Well, you did, because, see, they made it a rule that we should, your mate on the engine, this horse was frightened, he was supposed to get down and walk along and offer to lead it by. But you see, some people used to get a little like that, they didn't want him to lead it by. Then you used to have some fun at times, you know, the horse run backwards and forwards, and you was trying to get along, wanted to get along.
What about at night?
Yeah, at night time was the worst, because you saw two lights coming towards you. You didn't know whether it was another mate of yours coming with the engine or whether it was a horse and trap, until you got a little closer, and then you saw they was these little candle lights. One experience I remember very well, I was about along with Mr. Birch, you know. We turned Newbarn Corner going towards Itchin Hill. Saw these two lights coming towards us, and all of a sudden there was such a crack and a bang, and I said to him, I said, "Horse and trolley going over the edge there." Of course, he stops, and we could hear this old man right out in the field, you know, and swearing at the horse, and next thing we stood there and waited for him, and he went round and he opened the gate there side of Newbarn and went straight along into Limage. He was still swearing when he went by.
Tell me about the thrashing team, because thrashing was 100% teamwork, wasn't it? I mean, what sort of fellas were they and how did they work?
Well, when I first started driving full-time, I had about 6 or 7, and they laid rough on the farm, you know. See, they all had their bedrooms at these different farms. The farmer used to fix them up with a bit of straw and all that. But then they'd go right out in an old hole somewhere and light a fire, you know, make their tea and all that. But they chaps was good chaps. But if you've got a bad one, they'd very soon come to you. If you don't get rid of him, we're going. And that's the way you could only keep a good team, by getting rid of a bad one. But they used to get round that old fire, old Chatham and all of them, you know. And the sayings they used to have. It was all round the fire one morning. I went up there, and old Charlie went to get something. His mate took his kiddle off. He said, "I took your kiddle off, Charlie. It was boiling." He said, "How the bloody hard you know what I wanted it." And if they had bloaters, it was fatal. The full fishermen used to walk round with the basket. If they'd come with bloaters, they'd go out and buy 6 pennyworth, and they'd roll them up in newspaper and lay them on the old engine. And the old stuff used to run right down there in the smoke box here, you know. But there was always 2 on a safety valve. They was mine. That old grease used to run down there, and they used to cook them in that newspaper and eat them.
As you can see, the mud coming out of there now. Really coming
There are
out.
4 generations of Birches today in the business. There's Dick's son, Les, who's managing director. He has 2 sons in the business, young David and Richard. There's even a little grandson there who's right into it with a spanner. Steam is only a hobby now. The real Birch business is in modern powered machinery. But the characters here love steam, and so does Les Birch himself, even more than his dad. Les, I see you believe that old men like young women should be kept hard at it, at work, I mean.
Well, yes, Donald, I quite firmly believe in this, because there's no doubt about it, with Dad and Joe, a couple of old boys around the company like we've got, there doesn't seem to be anything too much trouble for them. They're the best of friends. I mean, they started as, Joe started, as you appreciate, working for my dad and granddad. He's been a very loyal worker. I cannot honestly say I can't remember him ever being late in the morning. He liked his beer, he worked hard, he earned his money, and he spent it as he wished. No one ever tried to infringe on his rights or tell him where he got to go and what he got to do. And that was one of the mottos Joe said was well for the company and for the firm he was working for. And there's no doubt about it, having been here, you know, bred and born here, with Dad and Joe and several more engine drivers and their mates, it growed into my blood. Nothing for what I couldn't sort of find and even drive a traction engine when I was around about 7 or 8 years of age.
It's the same feeling for Leslie's own sons, David and Richard.
Well, we've got grandfather Dick, you know, moving about the business still, very active. What's his sort of unspoken message to you?
He's he's really an old gentleman, isn't he? You know, I mean, he's been very good to us. He's taught us everything we know.
He's kind.
That's right.
I mean, he's brought us up. Anything that we want, if we work for and help him, he will give us. And that's just basically his attitude to life.
And I remember you told me you got some other advice from an old man, didn't you?
Yes, he was a very, very old gentleman, and he come from Kent, and he said to me, steam engines have got a soul. They're not quite like a car. When they go wrong, they actually tell you that they're going to go wrong. They're not quite like a car, just break down. They seem to start to blow steam out and give you a very, very long warning, and that's what steam engines are all about.
Both of you, what do you miss most about steam?
The smell of it.
Well, I suppose so.
It's one of the
I got
things.
quite used to it, and it took a little while to get turned over. But now we've had diesel tractors, I wouldn't go back.
You wouldn't go back to steam?
No. Would you?
Well, I don't know.
He's a bit of a steam fanatic, but I don't think I would. I spent a lot of time in this last war when I had to stir my own fire up in the morning, and I think I nearly lived with it. And when I got off it, I said I'd had enough. And then I bought my diesel tractor.
Well, I looked at you both today, and I thought you haven't lost your touch either of you on those old wheels and levers. You never forget it, I suppose, do you?
You only want to be on it in about 10 minutes, quarter of an hour to get used to its ways. There ain't one engine works alike.
Memories coming out there like blasts of steam. Joe Bull, you know, today I should think is like a senior vice president of steam. He's the fella that all the young amateur or beginner steam students come to for advice and consultation, and good advice they get. Well, every year since he was about 70, Joe has been getting birthday cards, modest little things like this, you know. Aren't those beautiful? And those are really treasured by Joe, and rightly so. Opens out, you see, gets one of them every year. And look at this one. Have a look at that. The old stove there. I don't know whether I can get it open, see what's cooking. A hedgehog. Well, I suppose Joe, in his day, might have cooked a hedgehog, but there may be some secret significance there anyway. But these lovely cards come to him every year and show how people respect him. Well, we went back to the workshops for the great event on the steam calendar when engines and owners come from miles around to the field behind the Birch workshops for the great Sellindge Steam Special. And we saw those old engines sleeping there suddenly come to life and come lumbering out into the yard.
What is it about this spirit of steam, now that men don't have to actually work with it? It turns men into boys again and youths into smoky, oily veterans. I think it's respect for steam and all that it did to build a once successful agricultural Britain. Engine owners come to these almost pagan festivals from miles around, polishing, wiping, coaxing, cursing, spitting, persuading, and keeping the old flywheel spinning. This is the life for a single steaming, heavenly, grubby day. And I can tell you it is a grubby day here today, because there was very heavy rainfall the night before. These old steamers, well, they're grand, they're good, but they don't take to this sort of thing. They don't like mud, because those wheels get spinning, as Joe Bull would tell you, and it's greasy, it's nasty. It means all hands to the pump, because Even Dick there, Dick's lends a hand, but modern equipment, I'm sorry to say, like this or a bit bigger, has got to get to work to pull those old steamers out of the muck. But there they go, grand, polished, smoking, talking to each other almost, as they go onto the showground, twiddling, turning. Needs a lot of concentration, this. Really a lot of courage, I think, because the weather was against it. Les Birch says it's just about the worst Sellindge Steam Special for weather that he's known since they started. Tough going, but they made it in the end, and now it's all the fun of the fair. And there was a fair, because always the old Steam Special has with it the fairground and the music. You see, all this really is part of steam, the mortier organs and the guilt and the joy and the grandeur, and here we're getting ready. They line up there, the old thoroughbreds, steaming and snarling and whispering to each other, complaining, smouldering, coughing, ready for the great race to see not who's the fastest, but who's the slowest. They're off, and this is what it's all about. The great line of steamers. It's the last one who wins, but he's got to keep the wheels turning, he's got to keep the flywheel running, and he's got to keep the slowest pace. It isn't the first over the line, it's actually the last over the line. And there's a lot of skill in doing this, and the people who drive these engines are pretty well on the ball. They know exactly what it's all about. Well, there she is. There's the winner. That engine there, coming over the line last, and obviously they have just got it. I thought they would. There was something about the look of those two drivers there that made me think they've done it all before. Time now to start another great trial of strength, something really quite different. Here we are, 7 horsepower of steam, the boys and girls on the rope. I don't know how authentic this is, but it's a bit of give and a bit of take. Of course, a bit of encouragement is needed now and again, a bit of the old carrot and that stick. I knew my stick had come in useful.
All together,
Well, those old evening shadows beginning to fall now.
the end of a long, very hard day, and for Dick and I, it's a glass of beer at the beer tent. I tell you what, I got really quite hungry when I was listening to Joe Bull talking about those bloaters, frying them up on the old engine, you know. Well, there's a couple of bloaters. You don't see them very much these days. And certainly a man who can tell us all about bloaters is John Griggs from Hythe. John, how long has your family been in this fish catching and curing business?
Well, our family's been in the fishing industry for about 150 years. Goes back about 7 generations altogether. And we've been curing herrings for something like 50 years, 51 years.
Well, tell me something. How does a bloater get this surprised look on its face? You know, because it starts off, I suppose, as an ordinary herring, doesn't it?
Yes, it starts off as a herring. There, for instance, you've got a herring, you see, and it's put on the stick like that. Its head has to be open. This is known as a spit. Its head has to be opened, and it comes out as a finished article as a bloater, like that.
How many of these did you put on a stick in the old days?
Well, we always put 20 herrings on a stick, because that was 1/6 of 100. There's 6 spits to 100. And in the old days, in about the 1920s, they were sold for something like 3 shillings a long 100.
What's a long 100?
A long 100 is 132 herrings and 120 bloaters.
This is something like a baker's dozen, but in the fish trade.
Yes,
Yeah.
I suppose so, really.
But what was the idea of that, the 132?
Well, the 132, they allowed for, when they sold them to the curer always reckoned that he had about a dozen that weren't fit to put on the stick. You see, the heads were broken when they was pulled out of the nets. And he reckoned that he would only make 120 bloaters out of 132 herrings. So he only gave 120 per 100, 6 sticks at 20 a stick.
Now, back in Joe Bull's day, when he was very fond of a bloater,
yes,
I think,
yeah.
How many herrings were cured, say, in a night, you know, down at Hythe in your place?
Well, in the 1920s, it didn't used to be anything for us to catch anything like 80 or 90,000 herrings per night. And you can reckon there was about 20,000 on some nights in the busy part of the season, which lasted from October till about mid-December. 20,000 herrings a night could be cured in Hythe.
So, where have all the herrings gone?
Well, this is the thing. Of course, over the last 5 or 6 years, the channel has been closed for herring fishing, you see.
Well, where'd you get those from, then?
Well, actually, I think that herring come from Dougalling this morning.
You're saying that French fishermen catch these herrings and export them to the UK?
They're exported. We can buy them. We can buy, although the channel is barred, and I believe it's under the common market law, the channel is barred for herring catching from Margate right down through the channel to Land's End. The Frenchmen still fish for herrings, and we can buy them in Billingsgate, packed in polystyrene boxes, 2-stone boxes, and that's how we get our herrings, what we want mostly today.
It sort of suggests that someone's not playing the game.
Well, it is a bit ridiculous, really, isn't it? That's what it amounts to, I expect.
Yeah. John, what are the finest wood chips for curing?
Well, naturally, oak gives the best flavour, but any hardwood, we're fortunate enough to be able to still get quite a bit of hardwood in Kent, and that gives the best flavour, aside from the oak.
By the light of the torches, we saw the black hulk lying out a little way from the mud of the shore, like a wicked Noah's Ark, cribbed and barred and moored by massive rusty chains. The prison ship seemed, in my young eyes, to be ironed like the prisoners. You know, I can read that now and it still sends shivers through me. It's, of course, Pip talking in the immortal Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. But those prison hulks, those convict ships, that Dickens wrote about, lying in the lower Medway, were not the only horror ships to be found there in those old days. Down here at Stangate Creek, there was a place marked on the old maps right up to the year 1912 as a quarantine area.
Just imagine this lonely stretch of mud and water, way back in the 1800s, lined with the rotting hulks of what were graciously called hospital ships. The grim story of the lazarettos. The name is derived from the Italian lazaret, meaning leper, is strangely undocumented. The term never appeared in Admiralty records. We can only conjecture today that conditions aboard these hell hulks that lay in Stangate Creek were indescribably horrible and hopeless. Those who were well when quarantine began soon became ill in the disease-riddled, verminous hulks. Those already ill soon died like flies of plague and yellow fever. Their unnumbered bodies were hurried ashore to rough graves in the aptly named Dead Man's Island and on Burntwick Island. Today, fishermen and wildfowlers often find skulls and human bones washing gently in the weedy creeks. There is one grave still visible in what must be one of the loneliest, most inaccessible mass cemeteries in the world. The last resting place of Lieutenant Michael Patterson, a naval surgeon who attended the crew of a ship, the St. Clear, lying at quarantine when plague broke out on board. Patterson himself contracted the disease and died tending the men.
Well, with me an old friend, Don Pearce, who is Public Relations Officer of the Medway Command and has also made quite a study of Dutch naval history. Tom, I have a feeling that the Navy in those days would try to conceal the fact that there was a pretty grim ghetto on the Stangate Creek.
I don't think it was a question so much of trying to conceal it, but people didn't concern themselves with social history in those days, be it in the hulks on the Medway or in the slums of London. It wasn't documented at all.
Yeah, but it does tell a marvellous story of devotion to duty on the part of naval doctors, because there were other doctors, weren't there?
A considerable number of them lost their lives, several in the Medway, and I can't help wondering how perhaps some of those convicts and in the prison hulks and the men coming back from the tropics and housed in the quarantine station were probably better looked after than some of the individuals in the poorer quarters of the larger cities at that time.
Could be so, Tom. Well, flying about in a helicopter and looking at Lieutenant Michael Patterson's grave is one thing, but getting there by sea is quite another. But the Royal Navy made a damn good try. We're setting off here in this beautiful launch, which actually is the property of the Queen's Harbour Master, Medway Command. Is that right, Tom?
That's correct.
And we're going to do this marvellous sail, which I never fail to enjoy, from Gillingham down towards Sheerness, down the great Medway estuary, Kent's greatest river, incidentally, and have a look at what is to be seen, and a lot to be seen. There is our coxswain, Petty Officer Jackman, and it's flaming June, I can tell you, because I've never known it rain so hard. Look out, we're going to be buzzed by the Royal Engineers. The Royal Engineers have been here at Chatham since 1812, and they boast two great generals in military history, Gordon of Khartoum, and Kitchener. Well, here they have the Royal School of Military Engineering, and it's dive, dive, dive. And people forget, I think, when we think of Chatham Navy, that we've still got the sappers there at Chatham too. There's one of the old forts. What about this, Tom? Doesn't this fill you with
it's a lovely sight, and a disappearing sight.
Disappearing site, yes, because most of these barges are now sort of commercially sponsored, aren't they?
They are indeed.
Yeah. Well, here we are. We're going to make a landfall here at Birch Island. I suspect it's not going to be too easy because Coxswain Jackman is not too keen with this valuable and very smart launch. He's not too keen to get too close inshore. So we're going to have to put off in a rubber dinghy. Look at that rain coming down. I was soaked to the skin even at this stage. But we're going to make the landing, I hope, on this very dismal, this haunting island. And my man at the oars is a young seaman, Len Smith, leading seaman, in fact. So I feel quite happy about this. And off we go. Now, the problem here is this riptide, and I wonder whether we're going to make it. He knows where he's going. Whether he will get there is another question. What do you think, Tom?
Well, it's never easy to get ashore on Birch Island. I've tried it several times, and it's always a battle against the tides, which rise very, very rapidly, and it's a hell of a problem.
Yeah. Well, I think, actually, the way we're going to be swept down to the Nore or somewhere. Look at that. And obviously, it's now going to be a case for naval ingenuity. First of all, rescue. So Coxswain gets his craft out into a position where he can get us back on board again, because this was, for me, a slightly harrowing experience. And naval ingenuity is going to take over. And so I think it starts, actually, where we've got to get a man ashore on the island, on Birch Island. So it's nosing gently in there, and we managed to get Brian Freeston, our researcher, and they come in, very useful researchers. He's got ashore somehow, got very wet, actually, with a line, and quickly Coxswain Jackman is pulling out from this shallow water. Remember, we're on a rapidly falling tide. Then the idea is to attach a line to the stern end of the dinghy, put the candidate in it. This is what I like about the Navy. They don't sort of pack up, Tom. They sort of say, well, we'll do it somehow. And look what they did. With this system, they got me ashore onto the lonely island of Birch. Now, this is a place that is full of rather grim memories, and it strikes you, I think, as soon as you get up onto this extraordinarily lonely moonscape. Tom, this is a most baffling, grim place, don't you think?
It is, and it must have been a terribly lonely place for the men serving in the lines of battle cruisers berthed in the river during the First World War. The old building you saw is reputed to have been used as a naval canteen. And can you imagine people going ashore there on a winter's night for a glass of rather indifferent beer?
Was it the NAFI then? I don't know.
I think it was the naval canteen service of the First World War.
Well, I found it quite a harrowing struggle to find and get to Lieutenant Michael Patterson's grave, but we made it. This was a grave that was regularly maintained by naval landing parties years and years ago. They came here and they actually scrubbed the surface of that grave with those weed pennants that you see there. And I must say, it does touch the heart a bit that this man, and as Tom says, I don't know, gave their lives for the sick of the Navy in those days. Perilous place, this. You put 1 foot wrong and you're up to your waist or your thighs at least. And so Patterson's grave there is, well, his angels of the air are the oyster catchers now. They're just about all that lives here, these beautiful swooping birds. They're guarding the grave. Tom, I don't know, it's a sad business, but there were other fellows, other doctors, weren't there?
There were other doctors who lost their lives looking after both prisoners of war who were housed in a line of hulks, and, of course, looking after men from the quarantine hulks. It's nice to think that at least an effort was made to look after the sick. And I think a surprising effort, considering the period.
Well, it's sadly appropriate that we move up the river now from those old tide-wash plague graveyards to Chatham itself, where, of course, the news is still there that the great naval dockyard will close with its warships and its great workshops and workers and its traditions.
Chatham, great naval base through hundreds of troubled years, and perhaps not free of them now. You could call it scruffy, but it brims with tradition and pride. Chatham, with its warships, cargo ships, swift launches, lazy old barges, and bustling tugboats, and of course its naval pilots, led by Shipping Master Harry Millen.
Well, as Shipping Master, I'm the senior civilian in our organisation. We are a civilian organisation that supports the fleet, and part of our section is in the tugs and pilotage. We take our pilot's examination after qualifying as master. Various courses are laid on, which end up in one qualifying in the basics of pilotage, then carry on until one picks up the local knowledge.
It seems to me that you've got a pretty tough job, because looking at these dock gates and entrances, they haven't changed. I was going to say since Nelson's day, but a little after that, anyway.
Well, it was in 1885, really, when this end of the dockyard was completed and the first ship came out of these lock gates. And as you say, the locks were designed for the ships of that time. The ships these days have got far more expensive. They're what we call thin-skinned. I mean, the slightest bump and there's hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of damage.
Well, you couldn't have a place like Chatham without a pub. Many pubs. We all have our preferences, I suppose, but for me, it's the old North Foreland in Chatham High Street. It's become nothing short of a sort of lively maritime museum, where if it isn't on the walls, well, they've got it somewhere. Practically anything from a marlin spike to a wardroom decanter, and lovely old photographs and prints and curios, all kinds of naval curiosities. Landlord, ex-Royal Navy man, Jim Jarvis.
You do this magnificent nosh in this pub, you know, but I notice you never serve fish.
Oh, well, that's serving with the cod war. Fed up with it.
What else did you do in this service?
Well, I spent a little time in the North Atlantic with the cod war, and then, trouble-wise, we did the Suez, East African problems where they mutinied, and the Persian Gulf. But because since the war it's been fairly peaceful, or since Kuwait it's been fairly peaceful around the world, just small little skirmishes. If you happen to be on station, you was involved.
But you brought a certain flair to this place, haven't you? I mean,
all this naval, maritime paraphernalia is absolutely marvellous. How did you assemble it all?
Well, it started more or less as a hobby. We was given a tremendous help from the local people, dockyard, people like Don Pearce and people like this. And it's amazing. Once you start a collection, it then carries momentum and really catches on. We get people now walking into the place offering bits and pieces.
This little back bar always fascinates me. I love these rather muscular ladies behind my head here. And there's a great story, isn't there, attached to this place?
Yes, certainly. This building was built originally for the Dutch East India Shipping Company. And they had the office here for about 80, 90 years. We broke into the fireplace first, and then pulling away all the plaster and the brickwork, we found all these carvings, but they was fairly well damaged. So they borrowed the chap from the dockyard who does all the ship's figureheads, and he brought them all out in the paint and the gilt. They're supposed to indicate the Dutch East India Shipping Company, that this covers the 4 continents which they served, Asia, China, India and Europe. But don't ask me which is which, because they all look fairly similar. The ladies, we always joke, look pregnant.
Having seen the Medway over the years, both as a naval man and as a publican of Chatham, what do you see as the main changes that have happened?
I think just the decrease of shipping on the river, you know. I mean, when we first come here, every berth was taken. We went round by the dockyard, there was reserve fleet, all in cocoon, all moored there, the dockyard was flourishing. Now, basically, we can say the river's almost dead.
Well, once before in our naval history, there was a massive cutback in spending on the fleet. During the reign of Charles II, England was financially on the rocks. The merry monarch decided to save money by resting the fleet here in the Medway, at a time of what you might call Cold War with the Dutch. In the first week of June 1667, the British fleet lay at anchor off Chatham. Many of the men were ashore. Many more had deserted because they'd not been paid for months. They were protected, they thought, by the guns of Upnor Castle and by a great chain which stretched across the water from Gillingham to the Hoe salt marshes. But they were sitting ducks for the Dutch Admiral de Ruyter, who launched a naval strike up the Thames estuary. On the 10th of June, the Dutch fleet was sighted off the Nore at Sheerness. They swept up the river, piloted by an English exile, a Cromwellian sailor called, ironically, Robert Holland, and they caught the English fleet with their sails down. In the battle that followed, 16 of England's finest ships were sunk, and the pride of the Navy, the Royal Charles, was captured by a handful of Dutchmen in a rowing boat. The Dutch landed at Gillingham and Sheerness, and it's said that de Ruyter sailed from the Medway with a broom hoisted to the mast of his flagship as a sign that he had swept the English fleet from the seas. What went wrong?
Basically, the country, and hence the Royal Navy, was bankrupt. The Navy hadn't been paid for months. The men in Chatham Dockyard hadn't been paid for months. There was no cash. Peace talks were going on in Breda, and the king was gambling that the war would be brought to an end before another season's fighting. So hence the ships weren't manned. They were short of ammunition. Chatham was unprepared.
Seems to me, Tom, that the story of the British Navy for about the last 400 years has been one of shortage of money and inept politicians.
Whoever gets as much money as they think they're entitled to.
Well, anyway, from those stirring days, from the great Pearl Harbor of those days, let's look on to another great tragedy of the British Navy that happened in the Medway And today is marked by just a wreck buoy. There rides the West Bulwark buoy, locked in its scarlet cage, the secret of one of the Navy's greatest tragedies. The date is the 26th of November 1914, with Britain only 4 months into World War I. 10 mighty battleships of the 5th Battle Squadron swung gently in line at their moorings in Kettle Reach. On number 17 buoy rode HMS Bulwark, pride of the squadron, 15,000 tons, 4 12-inch guns, built in Devonport, 1902, crew 750 officers and men, and their captain, Guy Slater. 2 weeks earlier, Bulwark's 12-inch guns had been shelling the Germans as she laid off the Belgian coast. Now she was loading ammunition from Sheerness. Her magazines held 80 12-inch shells and 200 6-inch. At 7:53 a.m., there was an explosion so great that windows were shattered in Sheerness, buildings shaken in Eastchurch and Laysdown, shockwaves were felt in Southend, and the whole land trembled as far as Gillingham. When the huge pall of smoke around 17 buoy lifted, Bulwark, as a battleship, had gone, every boat and plate of her. Some old men say that just before, the band could be heard at practice. Of Bulwark's crew of 750 officers, men, and teenage midshipmen, 12 survived, to tell sickening stories of being sucked up high into the air by the force of the explosion. For days, bodies were washed ashore on the already notorious Burntwick and Deadman's Islands, and in the creeks around Stoke. The name Bulwark was never to be used again in the Royal Navy for 34 years. Rumours of German spies and saboteur divers swept through the Medway, but the long official inquiry blamed accidental ignition. Think on this as today you breast the steel memorial of the Bulwark buoy, riding those deep green waters. Well, there we have the remnants of a shattered fan belt, which I suppose I shall have to get fixed sometime. I suppose that demonstrates, you know, the total power over our lives, most of our lives, of the internal combustion engine. But I found a nice place just recently where the internal combustion engine does not rule, okay? In fact, its power stops at the gates of the Seven Sisters Country Park in East Sussex. There it is on the map, down here. Here's the River Cuckmere coming down, and it's about there, I should say. And of course, its crowning glory are the Seven Sisters themselves, those named peaks of chalk that stand out into the channel. And there's several hundred acres here of paradise country where you can walk on foot, no motor cars allowed, the winding oxbow there of the Cuckmere River, moving out towards the haven itself. This, of course, was, in the old days, great smuggling country. And there's the haven. And if you stand there, half close your eyes, you can still see the old smugglers' boats creeping in at night to the mouth of the river there. One man who knows it all is John Gascoigne. John, what have you got here that makes this place so special?
A square mile of the South Downs. We've got the only undeveloped river estuary in the south of England. We've got the cliff face, the Seven Sisters, that have been acknowledged since 1500 and odd. The old mariners always recognised the Seven Sisters. They named them. we've got the whole interests of botany, ornithology, geology, any of the ologies. They're all here and demonstrated.
And you're not wanting to change anything, are you?
No. We want to stabilise what we have. We want to be able to keep them and to allow the maximum number of people to be interested and to actually be able to see them.
I reckon it's true, just now at this time of the year, that every 6 paces you walk, there's something nice to see, isn't it?
Absolutely. Every pace you walk.
Every pace.
Yeah. That's 6 times better than you said.
Now, what can we expect to find here, John?
Ooh. Well, downland flowers, look. Here, dropwort, philopendras.
But this has a use, hasn't it, in herbal medicine?
Yes, they used to use it for headaches and that. It's only just recently, well, fairly recently, been found it contains aspirin. So there might have been something in it. It's a rosaceae, it's part of a rose family, of course. Here, pyramid orchids. Ah, beauties, aren't they?
Oh, yes.
Eh? Pyramid orchid. Smell like an old tomcat. Cool. But they're beauties, aren't they?
Yeah.
There's another one.
What's that?
Oh, that's mignonette. There are 2 mignonettes. Funny enough, there's only 2 mignonettes in Britain, lutea and luteola. This is lutea.
This is very much a flower of the South Downs.
Belongs to the Downs, belongs to the Downs, yes.
Plant life, wildlife, all the ologies, as the man said. And of course, the little river, winding back from the white spires of the Seven Sisters right up the Cuckmere Valley. The river in its many moods. We picked a couple of beautiful days to see the valley after practically dying of exposure on the River Medway last week. Here we are in a field of ripening corn under the bluest of skies with the temperature in the 80s. Well, that's England for you. And walking up the valley, out of the nature reserve and across the river to the village of Alfriston. Alfriston, the name has a ring of Saxon splendour about it, doesn't it? A prosperous little place it is now, thanks largely to the tourist trade. And here's a man who looks as prosperous as a tradesman should. Albert Wood, village butcher. Well, opposite Wood's butcher shop in the village square, of course, they used to hold cattle sales, sheep sales. One of the 2 remaining market crosses in Sussex, which was built a long time ago to remind medieval traders of their Christian duty to deal honestly with the customer. Well, talking of traders, how's this for a shop that keeps the old traditions alive? A typical village store of the Edwardian era, preserved in aspic almost, but what a preserve. Just look at that range of goodies, and presented in a style that almost gives you the taste of Edwardian England with its love of good food and drink. And what's this? The Lampson Rapid Cash System, or the Whizzer, as David Phillips calls it. David and his wife Liz both gave up top jobs in London. He for Habitat, she for the Sunday Times, so that they could buy the old village store and run it as they felt it should be run, along the old lines. You'll never believe this, but there's a lady outside your shop door now
I said, I'm sorry, I'm in your way. You want to go in? She said, I didn't think I could go in. Is it a real shop? But really, it does seem too good to be true. Is it too good to be true?
We don't think so. It really works.
We like it very much. It's almost too good to be true for us, we think, to have found a shop like this.
The Phillipses, tell me how it all happened, who you are and so forth.
Well, my wife and I used to come down here for holidays, and we'd seen the shop. And at a certain stage in its career, about 6 years ago, we heard it was up for sale. We didn't think very seriously about it. But then subsequently it changed hands about twice in a period of 12 months. And when we heard it was changing hands for the third time, we thought this was fate beckoning in a way, because we'd always admired the shop. It's a beautifully preserved shop. The interior is as beautifully preserved as the exterior was. And we'd always liked the idea of running our own shop. And when we heard it was up for sale a third time, we came and talked to the people who were there at the time, and almost by accident, we found ourselves making an offer after about 24 hours.
How have you created this period atmosphere so accurately?
Well, I think it was a natural, really, because the shop in itself is so beautiful that one really honestly felt it would be a shame to change it. It needed a lot of bolstering up, and fortunately David, I think, would have made a very good antique restorer. He's always making things that really look terribly authentic, and in fact were made last weekend in the workshop. I mean, like the boards that we have hanging around the shop. People think they're authentic, but in fact we put them in, and they were copied from the thing that would have been in the grocers of this sort of period.
You've got this lovely atmosphere of very personal service, but would experts say that you can't afford to do that sort of thing these days?
Without a doubt.
Probably, yeah. We really are a bit anachronistic, but we like running a shop this way. It's the way we've chosen to do it. We think our customers like it. That's the way we're going to carry on doing it.
Coffee? Tea? Well, you know, I think it is time for a little refreshment. And in this absolutely scorching July weather, refreshment is what I need, I think. And where better than the Litlington Tea Gardens? Oh, very famous they are. The oldest in Sussex, some say. Well, tea and cakes, strawberries and cream. How's that for a classic English tea in a classic English tea garden? Except that it isn't, you see. Its owners are French, and there lies a story. Just behind the tea gardens is a big old house, a house that used to be called Litlington Manor. It's owned by a very interesting French family who use it for a particularly French purpose. Now, don't let these nurses' uniforms fool you. That's just a measure of how seriously the French take the art of cooking, or cuisine, I should say.
Keep in mind that your egg whites should be frothy before you start beating them. The longer you stay here making a deep froth, the better it will be for your eggs. For a meringue, your eggs should be very stiff, of course. What you want to do is make some eggs. I see that
For this is the English branch of the famous French Cordon Bleu School of Cookery.
Easily. You always start slowly, your eggs.
And the house where it all happens, this beautiful house, lovingly restored as a school and a home by
A ravishing French lady, Madame Sabine de Merbec.
I choose Litlington because I came to see a friend in Westdean, which is the next village. And when I came here the first time, I was absolutely amazed by the country here. I think it's a lovely place. It's really a marvelous place. So I thought, well, why not? Why not here?
Is its interior now a French house, a French family house?
It's a family house. I don't know if it's a French house. When we came in England, we wanted to buy English furniture and to have an English house. But everybody who comes here said, oh, it's so French. So we didn't, I think we didn't succeed in the English way, I think.
You see, you are an Anglophile, aren't you? You
Yes,
love England.
Yes, I love England. That's why I'm here. I love really England.
What do you like about this area in particular?
It's unspoiled. It's completely unspoiled. I think all the village are the same that they were before. I saw photos of the village at the beginning of the century, and nothing has changed. I think it's exactly the same.
How would you explain the difference between very good French cooking and English cooking?
I think it's completely different. I don't know a lot about English cooking. I love it. I love some dishes I know, like lamb with mint sauce and your roast beef with Yorkshire. I don't really like the sausage, I'm sorry. But I think the French cooking is it's difficult to say. It's more, is it more elaborate?
And here we are, climbing the valley's steep side to win this prodigious view. At nearby Wilmington, well, you can visit the Priory, then find your way outside to the best view of that mystical 231-foot tall figure, the Long Man of Wilmington, the largest human figure of his type in Western Europe. Until 2 centuries ago, he seems never to have got a mention in writing, standing there with his 2 staves, if that's what they are. Not as anatomically complete as his Dorset brother, the Cerne Abbas giant. Some whisper that blushing Victorians modified this chap. There's downland dust in my throat, and this looks like the place to remove it with a draught of Sussex ale. But this isn't a pub. It's a cider museum assembled by Christopher Ann, whose collection of cider memorabilia Well, Christopher, I don't know, one hears of vintage car museums and laundry museums. Now you have got a cider museum going, this place of yours up in the Cuckmere Valley. Now, what sort of set you off on this?
Well, it was purely by chance. It was finding a rather lovely old piece of wood that turned out to be a cider press, and that happened to coincide with a year when there were an awful lot of apples, and so we used it and managed to extract some juice. And I've actually brought along a little bit of that first brew of 1966.
Well, I think it's a very good thing, before we talk about this serious subject, to just have a taste of the product.
Yeah, it is getting very dark now because it's been resting in wood for a while.
Is this a real slayer, this stuff?
Well, no, funnily enough, not so strong. It's got a tremendous flavour. But
what vintage, what year is this?
This is our 1966, which was the first.
1966?
Yes. And it's almost a result of, or it is a result of having been on the lees or the sediment for a long time that's given it this special
Cheeky
flavour.
little cider.
It's a very ripe little number, I think we have. Good help.
There's a lot of sort of impedimenta connected with the cider making business, apart from the goodies we eat. But I mean, this is something, isn't it? This three-handled mug, that's got a story to it, isn't it?
Yes, that is a loving cup, and the idea was, as I understand it, that you would sort of pass the loving cup around the table, and maybe your lady next door you would pass the mug to, and if she should take it with two hands, well, perhaps you should look elsewhere, and otherwise, maybe with one you were a fortunate man.
And what about this thing that looked like a shoe?
Well, a shoe, it certainly it does look like. Could have been from an early bit of armour, maybe, but no, it is indeed a muller. And it was used probably more often than not for ale, because ale used to get fairly rough, I think, and particularly in winter, and they probably fortified it with a bit of sugar. And the ale muller, which could also have been used for cider, and this toe was pushed into the ashes of the fire. And so gradually it warmed up and convected around it, and this gave you a really very warm and particularly nourishing drink during the depth of winter.
Now, I think of those old boys in their smocks, you know, and floppy hats, rushing out into the, plodding out into the fields. They would take their cider with them. I mean, what would they be sort of carrying? Would they have it in jugs or something, or what?
Well, I think, you know, if we bore in mind this, it would be really rather heavy to have sort of clanking alongside your belt when you were working in the fields. And they did devise this rather splendid little barrel. And here we have it, the costrel. Now, the costrel came in many sizes, and this particular one was probably for Junior, who was out helping father in the fields. And the technique of drinking is rather unusual, because you would imagine with this piece that you would put it to the mouth. But we understand that the way they used to drink it was with a slurping motion, like this. I wonder how necessary it was.
Don't do it.
I wonder how necessary it was, or whether, in fact, it was just brought about by boredom, and it made their drinking more interesting, I think.
Now, cider and, of course, some lovely cheese. This is farmhouse cheddar, but when you use the expression farmhouse cheddar, it's like, these days, it's like saying Spanish champagne, but what really is farmhouse cheddar?
Well, farmhouse cheddar is matured indeed in very few farms, and I think we could number them at under 20. But there is, again, as with many traditional foods, I think a revival underway, and I think we'll surely see much more farmhouse cheddar.
And look at that beautiful bread. I mean, that really is bread, isn't it?
Yes, that is a Coburg loaf. We make it in our own bakery. My wife actually makes that bread, and it's a soda bread, and that is a whole wheat bread. And then you have the plaited loaf, which is another interesting shape.
Well, thank you, Christopher. I tell you what, when I walked out of your museum, I thought that the demon cider had really got a grip on me. Well, not the proverbial pink elephant, but a Watusi cow from East Africa. In fact, he's one of a number of rare breeds from nearby Drusilla's Zoo, looked after by cowman Jim Wickham, who's worked with cattle and horses since he was a boy on the old ox teams. Jim, you're here in the Cuckmere Valley looking after a pretty strange assortment of cattle. Do you ever feel you're a bit of a rare breed yourself?
Oh, yes, I do. Quite a lot sometimes when you get such animals as them come to you.
So you've got these different breeds of animals, Jim. Have they got different personalities?
Oh, yes, especially this East African thing. That is much different to ours.
Bit wild?
Yes, she's very wild. But actually, I don't think she means to hurt you. But if you get in a box with her, she seems if she's either been knocked about or she is nervous and she wants to get swinging her head about. And of course, that's a tidy span, as you can see. You ain't got a lot of room.
Jim, what about the old days of the oxen teams? You've got some memories there.
Yes, I have. You had a team of 6, actually, which is in pairs, of course. But when you was breaking a pair in, you had 8. Because the 2 young ones what you was breaking in, they wasn't classed as a pair until they was about, well, to the 3-year-old, and then they had to take a place of a pair then. But they say they're very slow. But are they? I'd never really worked with them, but I've been alongside them all day long, to and fro. But you've got to keep your horses going here from 2:30 to 3:30, I might tell you, to keep with them. And at 3:15, them blokes didn't dare stop those oxen at each end of the field, or else if they stopped, you'd get one go down. And then another one would go then. You couldn't shift them until you took them off, because that was time to go home.
I know we all get used to the places we know and take them for granted, but where's your favourite place, your favourite view in this valley?
Well, if I was to tell you the truth, I think I was up the top of Hythe over and look right down through the valleys and that way on.
What about the inside of the cricketers?
Oh, well, that's a different matter.
A grisly and slightly melodramatic end to an old-time poacher. Hard people to find, hard people to talk to sometimes, but I do know one man, I'm going to call him a countryman, who lives round Chollock in the Stour Valley there. His name is Bob Ward.
This is his natural habitat on the banks of the River Stour, where it runs through the friendly old village of Hythe, and where there's a certain aptly named pub. And here, surrounded by the equally delightful fauna and flora of the public bar, is Bob Ward, who I think is best described as a kind of Raffles of the undergrowth.
bred the intelligence into the dog as well as the speed. But although now, it's lurcher clubs, lurcher racing. I first got interested in poaching when I was at school. I've always liked the countryside and got, like animals. So I started reading books in the library on poaching. I liked the dogs, the lurchers, whippets, greyhounds, and it just went from there. A lurcher, well, originally a lurcher came about because people weren't allowed to have greyhounds. So there was a law, you're not allowed to have a greyhound in case you poached game, used for taking game which belonged to somebody else. So there used to be a thing called a drover's dog, where they used to drive sheep and cattle from a farm to a market, which were really rangy sort of sheepdogs. So the idea, you crossed that with a greyhound. So you had the intelligence of the sheepdog, the nose of the sheepdog, the speed of the greyhound, but it was camouflage. It still looked rangy, but he'd been bred with something fast that had got the killing instinct as well. Oh yes, there's no doubt about it, yeah. Yeah, they know, I don't think... The ones I've got, the mother was a whippet lurcher. She was a whippet cross terrier, which is a good dog. But she was crossed back with a greyhound belonging to some travelling people, gypsies, whatever you call them, from the next village. And they crossed back, and these are the pups, the results. Poaching is definitely illegal, but it's an instance. If you went onto a big estate with a lot of pheasants, they've bred a lot of pheasants, and you take a certain percentage, only a small percentage, obviously, I'm not talking about big things, take a certain percentage, unless they know you've been there, they don't even miss it. And that is a fact. But the minute they find a feather lay in a cartridge case, a boot, or then all hell's let loose, the poacher's been on the scene. That's it. But although now, of course, there's lurcher clubs, lurcher racing, they're trying to get rid of this. A snare set correctly will kill the rabbit virtually instantly. It should break its neck if the rabbit's at high speed. But what caused all the trouble is somebody setting one incorrect. He catches the rabbit with the back legs round the stomach. Then that person that doesn't know how to snare is causing the trouble. You can see the rabbit trying to run where they go through there. Most people, let's say, set them out in the field. They're easy to catch a rabbit running in the field. But for this purpose, I've got to set it in the fence because of the sheep out. They'll walk the snares down, and obviously, the program's about people that aren't quite setting where they should be. You'd obviously hide it in a fence with them, But it's so easy. Actually, it's nothing hard about it at all to find where to set one. You can see the runs in any long vegetation. And setting them, the old saying is you set them a hand high for a rabbit, a hand and a half high for a hare. There's a badger set just over here. This one has been here, to my knowledge, for 2 to 3 years. I thought they'd left. There must be a pair in there because it couldn't have been an old rogue badger because it's been there so long and all of a sudden she's redug again this year. So I think it's a breeding set. Yeah, this is it. This is the one, well, it wasn't used originally, but this is what they moved in the game. There's been no real trouble with the badgers. We've got a lot of badgers here, and a real lot in the forestry and in these farms, anywhere where they're not disturbed. Well, in fact, there's a public footpath runs by several sets when the badgers are, they're all right with the people. Nobody hurts them. We've had no trouble at all. People have gassed them to death for tuberculosis in cattle, and nothing like that. Really, they're basically a harmless animal. We get 1 or 2 rogues that might take a chicken, but no, they're a lovely animal. I like to see them. It goes back to a very well-known gypsy. That's right, yes. As far as we know, the stud dog, the greyhound, was owned by Jesse Blue. The land here is really good for wildlife. There's a lot of pheasants, a lot of rabbits. We've got deer. We've got everything. Even the badgers. There's everything there. This land itself, I can legally shoot on the film. We shot on legal ground. It's a friend of mine. We got a lot of people allow you to shoot things because there's so much. There's so much. The rabbits. People say, "Oh, you're killing rabbits." But there's so many here. This is a good part of the country for game. It's rich in that. This variation of trees in this wood, you can get virtually any animal. I mean, a pheasant this time of year, of course, you can find that little dust baths where they dust in the deer runs. Mainly, if there's water, we've got a sheep dip near the wood with water on the edge of the wood, so obviously you can find the trails of the deer that came down to feed on the water. Rabbit runs are general. You can find rabbit runs anywhere on a farm. You'll find them in woods, but mainly coming from the wood to the fields. There's another badger set near here. This set here is a particular favourite of ours. We've been watching it, I can't remember how long, for a long time now. But we watch this old girl. She comes out every spring, does the spring cleaning. You can find her run where she goes up into there, takes some straw on it. No straw that anybody minds. You don't mind the small amount they take. But you can see, you can follow her every time. In fact, we come round with a lamp at night and we can see her come out the fields and go in. We haven't seen a breed yet, but we like to see them.
Well, this is my particular field sport, my off-duty weakness. Dry fly fishing for trout. On and off, I suppose I must have fished the Kentish Star for 30 years, and I couldn't resist the temptation to wet a line from the garden of the tickle trout. The fish aren't here as they used to be. The reasons for that are twofold, really: pollution and abstraction. But it isn't essential to catch a fish. The real joy is in casting the long line and the floating fly.
Bob, first of all, how does the good, single-handed, I emphasize single-handed, poacher view the gamekeeper?
To me, that depends on the gamekeeper. We've had nice gamekeepers, and you get today's gamekeepers. I don't think are a patch on the old ones. You know, the old gamekeeper, he was give and take, you know, within reason. But today's everything's modernised. They're all walkie-talkie. They're just out. It's just the money all the time, you know, for the landowner.
What do you think this thing is in the heart of the gamekeeper that makes him hate the poacher? It's something pretty big, isn't it?
Well, that's right, because the poacher is better than he. It's the only one he can't catch. You know, obviously he does catch poachers, we all know that, you know, but the poacher is as artful, if not, well, he's got to be more artful than the gamekeeper himself. And I think that's one thing he can't stand.
Yeah. Now let's have a look at some of the old impedimenta that poachers used, and let's establish that, what about, let's have a look at the gin trap first.
Oh, the gin trap, yeah, right. That's,
was that as cruel as they said it was?
Depends. For catching stoats or anything, if you catch across the body, it would kill outright. But gamekeepers, as well as poachers, would use them for rabbits to catch by the leg, so the thing did suffer. But a poacher can set them with corn on the plate, spread the corn around, put some mud on, put the corn on, to catch pheasants, which of course it'll catch the pheasant across the neck, and the pheasant's dead. Now, a gamekeeper doesn't do that, obviously, because he doesn't catch them. So everything a gamekeeper used to use them for, yes, it would have been cruel.
Do you think gamekeepers are as righteous as they say they are about what they kill and don't kill?
No. I know instances, I can't say who, of course, because, you know, I've no evidence, but I know they've been killed and left laying around the fields, not sold as at least a poacher would be using them for a use. But the things that keepers have killed, because they're there, they're taking food that the game would have eaten, you know, moor hens, or they're taking duck food, so they're just killed and left laying around the fields.
And again, we're not saying where or when, but an instance came to your notice. You were telling me about some buzzards, some rather special
Yes,
buzzards.
we had 2 honey buzzards. I work near an estate, and there's 2 honey buzzards that have came. I'm not sure where they come. I believe it's Germany, but all they do is eat bugs. They do not hunt game. And somebody come to take some rabbits from the keeper for sale. And it was in the freezer, laid one of the dead honey buzzards, which had been shot, obviously, for stuffing. It was in a polythene bag. So the keeper had shot one because there wasn't any, and, you know, it just a new thing for him to shoot. So he shot the buzzard, which I wouldn't have done, and any poachers I know certainly wouldn't have done.
Do you see the good poacher as a conservator of some kind?
Oh, yes. I mean, agreed he's taking somebody's game, but a good poacher doesn't kill out of season. He doesn't kill young animals. I mean, what would be the point in killing hen pheasants in the summer? I mean, it's cutting his throat. He's giving him a very bad name. And it's just an all-round, no, you wouldn't do it.
Let's have a look at your favourite ferret then, Bob. And I must say how much I enjoyed walking with Tinker and Cleo and Boot, your Labrador there. Oh, yes.
They're not.
Yes, he's a beauty, isn't he? Yeah. Now, how is he used? How would a poacher use this little chap?
Well, they're that tame. People always think they're horrible animals. They bite. They're not. If they're well used, they're very tame. And if I was going to use it, say I was going to poach, I could put it in a shirt. It's that tame. It will not bite. It'll climb over as you're doing now.
Yeah,
But it would not bite anybody, and it can be used very quietly. You don't need a gun. You use a purse net the same as anybody else to put over the hole.
Listen, put him back because he maybe doesn't like this room. But fen trap's a modern, humane type of trap, isn't it?
Yeah,
have you got a fen trap there?
That's the legal modern version of the gin trap. It's basically works the same, but there's no teeth. It's used again for stoats, but of course, if anybody wants to do anything,
why do you think?
Use it.
Why does a poacher have to be a poacher? What is it? It's not just money, is it?
Oh no! I think it's just it's everything. He likes to hunt. Oh, perhaps some poachers can't get permission to hunt anywhere. I don't know, but I think it's just an inbred thing. It's just an instinct. I don't know. It's a hunting instinct of some sort.
It's one of the oldest instincts in the world, I should think.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I should think it is. Yes,
since the law came into being, anyway.
Oh, yes, yeah. I mean, what is the law? It's only because somebody had a lot of money and bought big sections of land and nobody's allowed to hunt on it. Everybody basically was a hunter originally.
Yeah.
So somebody can come along and monopolise all that because he's got so much money, nobody hunts there apart from me.
Hello. Oh, hello. Well, we've got some guests. I'm sorry this place isn't really big enough, but Bob Ward, this is Gwendolyn Barter, who is a noted campaigner against blood sports. Would you like to sit there? Bob, I'm sorry, you sit on the barrel, because you're going to be over the barrel anyway. Right. And this is Bill Cotton, who is Bob Ward. Bill Cotton is, first of all, he's a member of a fishing syndicate on the River Star. He's a solicitor, so he knows a bit about the law. And he's also an honorary water bailiff. Well, have a seat there, Bill. I'm sorry it's rather uncomfortable. But we don't get lots of people here. What I want to ask you, Bill, is what have you got to say about his philosophy of poaching?
Well, I clearly don't agree with it. Poaching in any form is theft. But I do, in fact, distinguish between various forms of poachers. And the small boy with the bent pin, or the casual person who fishes on a river without permission, is one category. There's what I call the old style of poacher, who is a countryman at heart, doesn't take more than he needs, is not out for money. And then there are the well-organized gangs.
Yeah, I think both Bob and you and me, we all agree, don't we, that we hate gang poachers.
Oh, organised poaching like that, yes.
What do you think?
Oh, totally against it. Oh, yeah. I'm against it. Organised gangs clearing out release pens of pheasants and things. Yes, no, I'm against it.
Yeah, and we agree, I think, Bill, that it's theft.
Well, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, but nevertheless, it's been going on since the Norman Conquest or something, really, hasn't it? The poacher v. the Baron or the King.
Well, yes, you'll never stop it. I think that is very true. I think the people who own fisheries would be able to merely curb, they would never be able to stamp it out, particularly because the skilled poacher will always be able to outwit, in the sense that he can arrive and disappear unbeknownst to the bailiff or the gamekeeper.
What's the point of law which says you have been poaching, you're caught?
Well, the point is that at the moment in time when they take a wild animal or bird or fish, as the case may be, catch it, snare it, at that point in time, if it is on land which they do not own or in a river where they have no rights, that is the point in time when the poaching has taken place.
But in short, he's got to be caught red-handed.
To be effectively prosecuted, yes.
Yeah, yeah. But you don't really hate the sort of good old single-handed poacher?
I'd rather the devil that I know than the devil that I don't. And since, as I said before, I would prefer a man who has good fieldcraft and rivercraft. I would prefer him because I know that he will only take what he wants.
Just a little sneaking admiration for him.
Oh, indeed.
Now, Gwendolyn Barter, you haven't any sneaking admiration for any of these people or me, You are very much noted for the amount of rubbish you write and say against blood sports. So what do you have to say about this?
Well, I would have much more sympathy with the poacher if he did it for a living.
Yeah.
And not for farming.
Well, that's a very interesting view from you. Yeah.
And a syndicate is, after all, a gang, isn't it? A fishing syndicate is a gang, which you don't like.
I think
Am
that
I
I would
right?
draw a distinction between those who have lawful rights and those who have unlawful rights.
But, you see, I can't always understand. I tend to get irritated, and maybe you two do, with people who, upstarts from the towns and from suburbia, who tell the people of the country how they should behave and what they should shoot and not shoot, or whether they should fish and all this sort of nonsense.
I don't think it makes really any difference whether you live in a town or not. You either respect life or you think it's a target or whatever you like, a prey.
What do you think, Bob? I mean,
no, you're saying somebody goes out and kills just everything. That's not done. I mean, this gentleman with his syndicate, of course, I agree with syndicates owning game. Of course they should. I mean, he kills a certain amount, he lets a certain amount live. If it wasn't for syndicates, the casual hunter that goes out, there would be no game. If it wasn't for estates, there would be no pheasants. They'd have been killed.
Oh, no, indeed. And I understand it costs, what is it, £10 to bring a pheasant ready for to be shot at.
That's right. Yeah.
And it is, what's more, it's they do it in a virtually a factory farming manner. They use most of the, used most of the techniques of the factory farmer.
Do you think the blood sports followers are sort of as bad or as violent or doing so much harm today as they did, say, 100 years ago?
I don't see why not. They used to be more blatant about it because there was very little opposition to it in the old days. Now they have to be awfully careful what they say and a certain amount of what they do to get by.
What about you, Bill? Can you throw any more light on this?
Well, the only thing that I would add is that, following on a point that Bob's just made, that I can only speak for a fishing syndicate, a lot of money is spent annually by the members in maintaining and preserving the river, and that involves other matters apart from just keeping fish in the river. And I think Bob is right that if there wasn't that preservation and maintenance, a lot of our wildlife would disappear, both as a result of poaching, but pollution is another great enemy.
Yeah, you're a trout fisherman like myself. I would think that one good poacher does far less damage than one can of carbide or something thrown in.
That's absolutely right, yes.
And yet the type of vandalism, it's not poaching, it's vandalism, isn't it, that we are dealing with so often now, on rivers anyway.
Oh, yes, you get damage of all sorts of muck thrown in the river.
Would you both be prepared to sort of live and let live as far as a good poacher is concerned, one individual?
Aye.
What do you think?
It depends largely on what methods he uses for his fishing, for his poaching.
Yes.
I see a gin trap down there.
Out
That's
of date.
Illegal.
And I think Bob
But it's
would...
still used, I think.
Not to my knowledge. I've never seen them used, no.
My adopted boys tell me it is.
Possibly, but I mean, I can only speak from what I know, but they're usually the gin traps just used for decorations.
Do you think...
I think the snare is absolutely diabolical. I think you use a ferret.
Yes.
Well, now that I think if you have to get rid of rabbits, I think to put ferrets down and get the rabbit into a net and kill it humanely is probably the best.
You surprise me, you know. You're not a bit like I thought you were going to be.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you think gamekeepers are still, Bob, in the school of shoot everything that isn't game?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And you've had some bad experiences of that.
As the lady said, poachers can be cruel and everything else, but I mean, a gamekeeper that goes out, magpies vermin for stuff, so it's all right if he shoots the hen magpie in spring and the youngs die in the nest, but because he's a gamekeeper, that's all right. But if I happen to shoot something and they said, oh, that was wounded and it took a few seconds to kill it, that's wrong. But if a game kid goes, he can do this.
I have to close you there. Thank you, Gwendolyn Barter and Bill Cotton and you, Bob, for coming in. Very interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's it. We've been a long way, you and I, walking together, meeting interesting people in interesting places. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been a bit of a hodgepodge of the curious and the interesting, but I hope you'll come along again with me sometime, because the southeast abounds in the Dougalling sort of people, doesn't it? Goodbye.